Hello everyone, welcome to Learn DAX channel. My name is Siddesh and in this video we are going to learn the calculate DAX syntax. So the calculate function is one of the most widely used functions in Power BI which has two arguments. The first is your mandatory argument which is the expression and the next is your optional argument which is if any filter parameters you want to pass in the calculate expression. So your expression can be anything like the sumx function or the countx function or the distinct count or the average x or the max x or anything. And your filters can usually be a criteria for, let's say, selecting a product category which is electronics or which is home and office, or if you want to categorize or if you want to filter by the product name such as laptop, or if you want to use some time intelligence functions related to date like what was the sale in same period last year or month to date or quarter to date. So that's essentially is calculate function. It has a long range of functionality, and in this video we are going to consider sum x, average x and max x wrapped in a calculate function. So let's begin. So we have the data for products and sales, and we have different products that are being sold. For example, we have laptop, we have smartphone, we have headphones under different categories like electronics, furniture, home and office. And what we are trying to achieve here is we want to find, let's say, the sum of the product sold in the category electronics. We want to find the average price of the product sold in again the electronics category. And then we want to top it off with understanding which was the highest sold amount or which was the highest sale that was made in the product category for, let's say, electronics again. The reason why we are sticking with one product category is so that we can verify our answers with using sumx as our first output, then counting the number of products that were sold, and then the average x can help us to verify if our calculation for sumx and the count is actually adding up. So yeah, let's start with our first measure, which is before that, I'm just going to clear all these filters. We are going to need them later on when we are trying to validate our results. So let's start. The first is electronics sold amount. Now this will start with a simple calculate. Now when we want to calculate the sum of something, what do? We just calculate sum x. Now what is the table? The table is the sales table. Now, which is going to be our column? The column is going to be the amount column. So we use the sales amount column. But now we have, as you can see, the filter expression. We want to filter our output based on the criteria that the product category is going to be electronics. So how do we do that? First of all, we mention the table. The table is products, and the products category is electronics. Now if I drag this onto the canvas, I get 9,600 as the total sold amount. Now let me verify this using this table by filtering out only those product IDs which correspond to electronics. Now from the products table, we can see that 1, 2 and 4 correspond to the category electronics. So let me just filter the product IDs here which correspond to 1, 2 and 4. So I will select 1, 2 and 4. So I get 9600 as the sum. So we have verified that the output that we got using sumx in a calculate function is correct. So now what I want to do is before I move on to the average x function, I want to find the count so that I can divide the sum with the count to verify if the average is correct. So the count is going to be a pretty straightforward output. So I'll just write electronics sold count is equal to calculate count X. The table is going to be sales. The expression is going to be quantity. Okay, we can do one thing. Instead of using the quantity, we can straight away use this output, which is 17 for the count. Because if we go with the count measure, it is going to give us the output as 7 because it is going to count the number of rows and not the quantity. So in order to count the quantity, we can again use a sum x measure, and yeah, we can do that. So let's go with another measure. Electronics sold quantity is equal to calculate sum x sales quantity filter. Now we are going to filter out from the product table the product category as electronics. So now if I pull that onto the canvas and convert it into a card, so there we have it, 17 as the electronics sold quantity. So far so good. We have validated the output of sum x and also validated the quantity sold. Now we have to find average x, and we just have to validate if 9600 divided by 17 is tallying up with average x. So let me create a new measure. Electronics average amount is equal to calculate average x. So we want to find from the sales table the amount based on the filter that the product category. So from the products table, the product category should be electronics. So let me pull that onto the canvas, and the output that I got is 1.37K. Let me just change the format of this and convert it into display units as none. So it should be 1371.43. Now I will just pull out the calculator and do a manual calculation of the same. So 969600 divided by 17. Okay, so we have got some issue here. The average amount that is being displayed here for the electronics items is different from what we are getting from average. So let's troubleshoot this. What could be the reason? So we have sales as the table input, that is correct. We have the sales amount as our input for the average X, which is again correct. The filter should be based on the products table, and the products category has to be electronics. So why are we getting this output? Because the average that is being calculated in this case is based on the sales ID. It's not based on every quantity sold. So if I divide this by 7 instead, so if I divide 9600 by 7, this is the number that I get. So the average X is calculating based on the number of sales that have been made and not on the quantity that has been sold. So if we are going to calculate our average based on the sold quantity, okay, that is going to give us a different parameter, different output. But if we are going to go by the number of sales that were made, then this is giving us the average X. So the average X is correct. And if we want to calculate the total amount and the individual quantity sold, then that gives us a different parameter. Okay, so let's do one thing. we have to remove this and we need to maybe change that. Average sold quantity has to be not sum x but count x, because this is our transaction, and besides this should be our sales ID, because this will indicate the number of transactions that were made. And now when I bring this onto the canvas and convert it into a card, we get the output as 7. So these are little things that we keep doing in Power BI, where we try something, we get an output, then we verify it, we validate it, then we understand, okay, what could be the reason for getting such an output, and then again modify accordingly. Now let's move on to the last part of the video, which is to calculate the max amount. Now it's visually visible to us that the number that we should be getting is 2400. So, okay, we have the output already. Now let's try to find that using a calculate function. So let me call it electronics max max amount is equal to calculate. So max x from the sales table, the sales amount. Now filter, we are filtering the products table, we are filtering the products category, and our category is electronics. Now let me just pull this onto the canvas, convert it into a card, and there you have it. The max value is 2400. So this is what I wanted to explain through this video, which is to use calculate function, and within the calculate function to use different functions like your sum x, average x, and max x. This is not an exhaustive video on the calculate functions, but just some use cases that can be solved using the calculate functions. And I would be coming up with more such videos which has different use cases using the calculate functions. And if you find some value in this video, if you felt that you have a better understanding of calculate after this video, then please share it with your friends. And yes, like I always end video saying, happy learning.